All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending my talk. Just, just to have a bit of history behind this. I remember many years ago when I gave my first talk ever at London Pearl Workshop. That was this scary moment for me when I saw James Green. That earlier he was giving his first talk. It reminded me my first talk at London Pearl Workshop. Very scary moment, but I haven't seen it. It's nice to see some of the faces, those who were there in my first talk, still in this audience. So it looks like it's going a long time. Okay, coming back to my talk. Recently, I've been following Perl very closely about the development, what new features been adding. Before, I was too busy in my just day job, just using Perl, whatever feature we use for 10 years, continue doing that without bothering what is new, come added to the Perl, never bothered looking at it. But for last couple of releases, I don't know what made me watch carefully. I've been following very closely the new development in the Perl language. And I thought, why not talk about those new features that I really liked, and I'm looking forward to those features. So this is all about the feature that is added in the last release of 540. Just to get a background, how many of you are still using the traditional way of creating object in Perl, the blessed version? How many of you are still using? Not many. So I'm glad because I remember early days you're still using the blessed and you have a object created, hash-based, hash reference generally. And then came Moose. And my first impression was, it's a nasty. I said, I like it. You write less boiler code, but it's heavy loaded. It takes a lot of time to just load the thing. My traditional object is too fast, like instant. It's too good. Then came along Moo. I liked it. So for some of my CPR module, I converted those traditional objects to Moo. It's still fast, and I write less code. So we start from the, if you can, you remember this. This is the traditional way of. You can see so many, just a standard class. And then we're going to take this and move forward and see how it improves further with the new features added to the Perl. So this is my standard one from early days, maybe early Perl 5 earlys. I don't know when this was there. Then with Moo, this turned into this. It's nice and clean, no boilerplate code, just a standard. Couple of lines, define attribute, and you are good to go. If you notice one thing, here, the way you create an object, you pass a hash ref, and then you're dealing with it. With Moo, you get exactly the same way. There's no change in the calling, exactly the same, and everything works out of the box. This is, how about this? You still write your get method and fill. It's more like having a proper naming convention, like a traditional, you see most of the time, like Java and all those kind of, where you have a class and everything filled. Similar kind of thing. I like this most. The most favorite features of Perl in recent time. However, it's still not complete. I'm looking forward to have more thing added in coming. So one thing that I found it missing in this release was not being able to avoid creating those method for getter method. So that was the first release. So I thought the following release solved this problem by having a reader, colon reader attribute that solves this last two lines. So you don't need to do this. So that was the first feature of 540 that added, and that will help me avoid creating this getter method. How that will help. Now you see, Now those two lines disappeared with 540, and I have to use experimental because the class is still experimental. Everything is still the same compared to traditional objects. You call the exactly same, but no need to do reference. Just pass a key value pair. That's it. That's the only change you have. And you added the reader attribute. There's another variation with the reader. So when you create a code added $reader, you can specify your own method rather than having a default method, which is the name as an attribute name. How's that possible? Like this. So you can say $reader and you can give your own method name. So that way you can have either get the default or you can have your own user defined method as a reader like this. Now, this is another. Initially, I found this a bit confusing because we are all used to having underscore, underscore, package, underscore, underscore, if you remember. So I thought, okay, if we already have that keyword, why having another one? Then if you look at the documentation, there's a fine line somewhere. It says, there you go. So it does something special. That's why it's needed. I'm really scared. Paul even is sitting in the front row, and he's the one who is behind all these things. So I have to be very careful what I say. So, so what is the difference? This is, in my opinion, what I understood so far is it's only useful, it's different from packages when you have inheritance involved in your package. So this is what I meant. If you look at this, we have a class called example1, and I want you to tell me the difference. What thing you notice in these two examples? So there's a class one is example base class, and you have a class two which inherits example one. So in normal cases, you would say underscore underscore package underscore underscore, and then you call a method, which is a class method. Class method. Is that class method? There you call a method, but instead of defining the method as with keyword method, you have to do it with sub. That's the only difference. If you create a call a method which is defined with keyword method, it's going to complain. It can throw some error. I don't. Maybe that's by design is how it should be. So you have to have a method defined with the keyword sub and not keyword method to be able to call against the class token. So if you see the difference, if it is the, the example would tell you the difference. With example one, if you call the method sum, it takes what is defined locally, not it doesn't inherit. But in example two, if you see, it doesn't take the base class default values, taking the, the default value defined in the local class rather than going back to the base class. So this is quite useful, but I've not come across any real example where I can use it. But it's nice to have know this feature exists in 540. Now, I'm sure most of us use this many times. This low-level precedence logical operator, so many times we used. But in medium precedence, there's something was missing. We had AND, we had OR, but there was no XOR equivalent for medium precedence. So I was just wondering how we survived so many years without this medium level precedence. Perl being Perl, you could do this, something like this. So the missing medium level precedence for XOR, you can do, put a bracket around it, saying, okay, so this is higher than low level precedence. And so this is how to do. But with 540, thanks to Paul and his team, you don't need to worry about all this bracket, and you can do this nice and clean. No bracket, no need to worry about precedence. You already have medium and a low, so it will understand. what to do one. Very nice and clean. Thank you, Paul. Now, this is another feature that came with a big bang. No need to have a cpan dependency to have try catch. Now it is in the core. But it came with experimental thing. So still better than having cpan dependency. You can write, you can have use experimental try, and you can do try catch. One step further. I mean, it's nice to have, but it's still itchy. Why need to write experimental? I hate it. I just want, the moment I see a feature, I want without any experimental layer. Nice fix. But I can understand the logic behind having experimental so people can try and find any issues with this feature so can work on. But still, this was with 5.34 that was introduced with experimental. Same thing became non-experimental in 5.40. No need to write experimental. 5.40, you just use it like a regular features in core Perl. But there's something still missing. Finally block is missing. I wish. I'm sure it is in his to-do list, whole to-do list. I'm hoping in future release you will have a finally block that will make it complete. It's still better than cpan dependency, but still work around. You can work around it. You can have put a logic around it to handle the finally thing. But nice to have a proper finally block to make a complete try catch thing. So I'm hoping the next release we'll have finally as well. This is something nice to have. Not that important, but it's nice to have. Because I remember during one of the weekly challenge, there was some task where you had to pick n number of items from the given list. I've seen so many different variations of picking random elements, number of elements from the list. And people use so many different cpan modules. And I remember there was one method from one of the standard list or somewhere, list package. You have an n at a time method. First I thought, what's nat time? Then I saw n at time. It's a one word. It's very hard to differentiate, say n at a time. Then I realized this feature, say, is better than having cpan module and exporting n at a time method into it. Why not use experimental? Nice and clean. You know what you're doing, rather than having a dependencies and then using it. How that works. So with this was added in 5.36. So this is how it works. It's simple. You can have n number of variable depending how many items you want to pick at a time from a given list. No rocket science, simple. But then this is no longer experimental. So 5.40 remove that experimental thing. So you just use it straight from the core Perl, nice and clean. Thank you for the sponsors, and thank you for attending my talk. I don't know how many times you have. Any question? Don't ask me a difficult question, please. Yes.
This is necessary for you. It's the distinction between sub and method within the class block, whether they're exposed as methods.
This is what I've noticed, but I have no idea what is the reason why it has to be sub and not method.
I don't think it works anyway.
So, method means that we know that there's a self. We know there's an invocant, so you can see all the fields. So methods can see all of the fields and subs can't. The expressions for initializing fields are run as part of the constructor. So you're constructing an object, which means you haven't got the object yet because you're in the middle of constructing it. So in all of the field initialized expressions, there is no $self because there is no object yet. There's no self. This is one of the things that some of the other object systems find it a bit hard to deal with, seeing the object before you've completely initialized it. Whereas with Object Pad and with the core class feature, we've tried very hard to make sure that you can't see the object yet until it's fully constructed. Which then leads to the problem of how do I know what class I'm in? Because normally you would just call a method on, say, ref self if you wanted to see what class it was, but we haven't got a self, so you can't see it. So that's why we had to add the class double underscore so that you can see the class name of the instance you're eventually going to construct.
Your answer from the master. Thank you, Paul, answering my question.
Actually, I've got a less a question, more of a tiny little comment. You didn't mention true and false.
It was start making that. I thought that's an obvious thing. Maybe, yeah.
It's so nice to be able to write true rather than one.
Fair enough, yeah. Yeah.
Most of them now. The question was about JSON serializers. Yeah, most of the JSON and the YAML serializers do now recognize core Perl booleans, and yeah, they will print actual true and false now. Yeah.
I'm glad. No serious question. Thank you.